Shalom one and all. I have been holding on to my GK2, or as I call it, Susan, for quite some time now. I've been wanting to do a review, but I didn't want to do one without having fully experienced it and used it a fair amount of times. So in this video I'm going to be printing 100 mini doggos for an event coming up. The dog that it's based on is this feral beast here, and I'm going to be making about 100 of them. The good thing about this being quite an arduous and long process means that there's going to be a lot of prints going through this printer, so it's going to be an excellent test of reliability and consistency, two things which are very important in a printer, which I feel like some of the reviews sometimes lack. I'm going to keep this video simple because I'm a simple man and it's easier to create and easier to follow. We're going to have the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you stick around to the end, I'll tell you a few reasons why this might not be the greatest product ever, which everyone else seems to be saying it is. But before the review section of this video, here's a very compressed version of about 2 or 3 months of my life trying to make these damn little dogs. The resin I'm going to be using for this project is Sunlu's ABS-like resin. The only reason I'm using their one is because it's the cheapest, and I'm going to need a lot of it.
So as long as you guys know, don't drink it. Drinking resin bad. I'm going to put this up here just so you can all look at this and criticise me when this inevitably goes wrong, or just because the comment section loves a moan. So there we go, have a look at that and tell me what I've done wrong.
As always when changing resins, I needed to tweak the settings and do a bunch of test prints before actually doing any prints of things that I actually want.
That is really hot in there. Just so simple, but it's brilliant. Look, just clip up and it's out. This is like 3D printer crack. Just in case you're wondering, this is the kind of space I'm working with here because I've managed to fit 2 of these Congrow things in here. I've got no space for anything else. So I have that and that. And that's my lot, really. There's no way this is going to work. I've got a magnifying glass in front of a GoPro. There's no chance you're going to see this. But basically, I can see with my own eyes just about that it is somewhat underexposed.
I then adjusted the exposure time, did a second print, and it came out perfect. So now I can move on to the actual process of creating 100 dogs. I'll spare you the details on the supporting process, as because that's boring even for me. In fact, this is the worst part of the process, I would argue.
Right, Susan, how did it go? I can't see a thing. Ah, brilliant. Excellent work, Susan. You have birthed 3 amazing dogs.
Hooray! The first 3 dogs worked, which means I now get to play the game of how many of these can I fit on a build plate? The answer is 10. But like with a lot of things, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should, and I will show you why in a minute. But before that, me nearly having a very bad time. When you fill up this printer, do be careful with how much resin you put into it, as I don't find it that clear where the max level is. Maybe that's just me being dumb, it could very well be, but I got very close to having a bad day.
Please don't spill, please don't spill, please don't spill. Oh my god. Oh, that's so close. Oh, Jesus. That is so damn close.
After having that mini heart attack, the rest of the print went okay. Okay in the sense that all of the models printed as well as I wanted them to, but there were some strange things happening with the supports underneath them. On some of them you can see it hasn't fully formed properly, but then somehow the rest of it is still printed just fine, so it's not really a problem, but it could be. I managed to get around this by increasing the burn-in times at the beginning, so that mitigated most of the effects of these supports not fully forming. On top of that, I took it down from being 10 on a plate to 8, as I said before, just because you can fit 10 doesn't necessarily mean that you should, as the more items you have on a plate, the more stress it's going to put on the printer and the sheet, and the more chance you're going to have of something going wrong. And considering I'm making quite a lot of these, it's better to make slightly less of them each time if it means there's less chance of something going wrong. speaking of things going wrong, guess who forgot to put the resin in before doing a print? Yes, it was me. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done. From this point on, it's pretty much rinse and repeat, and it's extremely repetitive and dull, so you don't need to see the hours and hours of footage I have for this, as I did record every single print and every single post process. And largely it was completely uneventful, which is exactly what you want from a printer. You just want it to crack on, do its thing, and continue to do its thing without fail. Throughout the whole process of making this ridiculous amount of dogs, I had to re-level the bed twice. Both times it's probably up to interpretation whether or not I actually needed to, and I think I emptied the vat twice as well, because every time I emptied the vat I thought, well, I might as well re-level it just to be sure. There were only two notable fails during the whole process. One was entirely my fault, me being thick and not putting resin in, definitely not down to the printer. But there was one strange one, and to this day I still don't really know what happened. On one of the prints, all of them printed fine apart from one of them, which looks like it's being sucked into a black hole. At a guess, I'd say that because the starting of it didn't print properly, that at some point during the print it changed the angle that it was hitting the plate, and because of this, that's why it's so strangely deformed. But all features still printed, it just printed weird. But anyway, that is how I tested the printer, by making all of these dogs for an event where they were basically used as table decorations, but they were very well received and I was able to make the right amount of them. The process actually wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be, and they looked great. So now on to more of the review part of the video. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll start off with the good. The GKTWO features its own heating system and a built-in thermostat, so it knows how hot it is and it will get to a required temperature set by yourself. Which is great because when it's colder it will mean that you can have a consistent temperature and you're not going to worry about the cold weather affecting your prints. The GKTWO is also incredibly easy to use and it's designed brilliantly. It's just simple things like being able to flip that little catch up and pull the build plate out and then scrape it off, clean it up and chuck it back on. Same can be said for leveling the plate. Took me a while to get used to it, but now that I am used to it, it's so easy to do. It's the most easy system I've ever worked with when it comes to 3D printing, and the same for the vat. If you want to take the vat off, you just slide it towards yourself a little bit, lift it up, and it's done. Brings me on to another good point about this is the way the vat's designed and the way that the build plate is designed means it's so easy to clean because the ridges around it make sure that the resin only goes where you want it, and it doesn't get into any mechanical bits, any bits where the screws are, so it's not going to be a pain to clean. As this video has shown from me making that ridiculous amount of dogs, it's extremely reliable and very consistent. This printer just did exactly the same thing again, and again. Normally when I would start a print on my old printer, there's a small period of time where I sort of stand around it biting my nails, which I can't actually bite my nails because I've got a mask on, but I'm worried. I'm waiting for something to go wrong. I'm waiting to hit that power button until it's done a first couple of layers. But with this printer, I got to a point where I would just close the lid, press the button and walk away. And when I came back, everything was perfectly fine and it did exactly what I wanted it to do. Now this next point is not really the most important thing about a 3D printer, but this printer is quite pretty. Everything about it looks very sleek, professional, and it's just appealing to the eye. So if you're buying something that's going to be around your workshop and you're going to have to use every day, well, maybe you won't use it every day, but if you're me, you'll use it every day. It's nice to have something that looks as good as this one does. And one more point on the good side before I move over to the bad, this printer has its built-in air filtration system, which is a very simple thing, but it's just nice to know it's there. I wouldn't rely on it 100%, and just breathe in the air willy-nilly around it. You're still going to be getting fumes, but you're going to be getting significantly less than you would if it didn't have it. Now onto the bad. So for starters, the thing I don't like about this printer's construction, in fact this is the only thing I don't like about this printer's construction, is the hinge on the lid. There is no way that after a few years of me using this printer that I'm not going to break that. It just does come across as quite flimsy, and the mechanism where it locks when it's fully open doesn't always bite at the moment. So, and I've used it for less, I don't know if it's been a year, but it's been a while I've had this printer. So I don't know if that's going to last, but that's really structurally the only thing I don't like about it. Now this is a bit of a good and bad thing, because I have already mentioned the heating on the good side of things, but on the bad, the thermostat will work, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stop the printer continuing to heat up all the time. My example of this is you will set it up to go and you'll come back to it after leaving it set to 30, and I've had it quite a few times where it's been, let's say, a particularly warm day and it will be at 50 degrees. And I now know that printers will actually perform quite well at 50 degrees. That's Celsius, by the way. But if you don't want it to be 50 degrees and for a very particular resin that's very fussy to work with, you need it to be 30, then that could be an issue. Another thing I noticed about the heating in the printer is it will be set to, say, a certain temperature and it will get to that temperature before starting to print. However, I don't think it allows enough time for the resin to also be acclimated to that temperature. Because what's often happening, I think, with mine, where the supports were a bit of an issue, is at the beginning, the resin is going to be a lot cooler than it's going to be when, let's say, you're an hour into printing. And that's why at the start you might get a couple of fails, but past that, like an hour or so in, it all prints perfectly. I believe that is down to the fact that at that point, the temperature has risen well enough within the resin that it's the temperature you want. Now that we've covered the good and the bad, let's move on to the ugly, the big issue that I mentioned at the start of the video, and it is, just so that you would stay till the end and listen to this bit. Did it work? Are you still here? There's no ugly. This printer's great. This is easily my favourite printer. Granted, I did get this, full disclosure, I did get this for free from the delightful company that sent it to me. That is the folks over at Yes That's 3D Printed. They sent me one a while ago, and ever since then it's been the only printer that I've used, and it's the only printer that I want to use. My Anycubic Photon Mono X has been sitting on the shelf gathering dust ever since. Especially when it comes down to me trying to balance all of the things that I do, obviously, well, I'm not going to say social life, because it's not really my style, but the things I do outside of work, which I am obligated to do, I'll put it that way, and obviously my full-time job and the YouTube channel, and then trying to make it a 3D printing YouTube channel, I need the easiest and the quickest machine that I can get, and that is this. This is the easiest thing to work with. It takes that fuss out of it, so most of my time now can really be spent designing and coming up with dumb ideas for the channel. It really has made making videos way easier. Having a printer that just works and you haven't got to do a bunch of additional things to get it to work, it just saves so much time, and that is something I do not have much of. If you're looking for a 3D printer that's going to give you great results and be easy to use and not let you down time and time again, as this video has shown, I cannot recommend this printer enough. There will be links in the description below if you want to look into the printer any further, and I'm now going to tally up all of the money I've spent on resin.
Like I said at the beginning, this cost 15 quid, however this quickly ran out of stock and I feel like they might have even stopped making it, so I had to start buying these, and these are 26 quid. So in total, this is £119 for 100 dogs. I guess that's not too bad, that could have been worse.